Hey leaders, I'm Tara Lee Cobble, and I'm so excited to have you as a leader through this study. Thank you for stepping into this role. It's going to be great. If you're new to leading a group, I know it can be scary, so let me congratulate you on not letting fear make this decision for you. And even if you're not new, it can still be intimidating sometimes, especially with a topic as dense as the Trinity. It was intimidating for me to write this study, so I can certainly commiserate. Hopefully, it will reassure you to note that we're not asking you to teach this study. You don't have to know everything about the Bible. That's why we're studying the Bible together. All we're asking you to do here is lead, to say, hey, I'm going to study the Trinity, come do this with me. One of your primary roles will be facilitating the weekly meeting, and I'm about to give you some pro tips for that right now. Hopefully that relieves some of the pressure you might feel. I've been leading Bible studies since I was in high school, and I've collected a lot of experience along the way, both good and bad. So I'm going to share what I've learned with you in this video, and hopefully you'll find it helpful. First, we'll talk about the group meeting details, what each group session will look like. Then I'll give you some general tips on being a good leader. Let's start with the group meeting details. First things first, consistency and structure are really helpful in building a healthy group dynamic. People like knowing what to expect. So make sure to start and end on time. This will be a blessing to everyone because they've all carved out time in their busy lives to make this happen, so it's helpful to keep with the schedule. If possible, meet in a well-lit room where everyone is set up comfortably. If you're able to find a spot where everyone can sit around a table, even better. That way people have something they can easily write on when they're taking notes. I also encourage you to encourage your members to silence their phones. You'll need to repeat this at the start of the meeting each week. And since vibrate can be as distracting as a ringtone, make sure they know to choose silent, not vibrate. As much as possible, it's helpful if you can create a distraction-free zone for the meeting. That means you should aim to eliminate anything that can distract your focus from the topic at hand. Things like food, pets, children, phones, those are all good things, but they can also be wildly distracting. So, if you have a way to carve out a couple hours away from those things to just focus on the Word, that's ideal. Let's talk about some of the components of each session's group meeting. What will you do? In what order? How will you transition? Here's what a typical meeting might look like. First, I would suggest starting by opening in prayer. As the leader, it's great if you can pray at the first meeting. After that, you may want to ask someone else beforehand if they're comfortable praying. Switch it up each week by asking somebody different each time. And it's kind if you can ask them in advance, not on the spot. After the opening prayer, you can go straight into memory verses. Each week in our study, we have a section of scripture that we're memorizing. I'd love for you to offer the group the opportunity to practice what they've learned. Now, this can be intimidating, especially for people who are new to scripture memory, but it really builds their confidence over time when they see that they're able to do it. Also, practicing in this way has some built-in benefits to reinforce their efforts. By hearing others say the verse out loud repeatedly, it helps everyone commit it to memory even more. If you have a smaller group, like less than a dozen or so, consider going around the circle and encouraging every person to say the verse out loud one by one. If you have a larger group, more than a dozen or so, ask your members to say the verse to the person sitting beside them. I found that it's best to do this at the start of your meeting because lots of people rehearse their verse on the way to the group meeting, which means it'll be fresh in their minds at that point. If somebody arrives late, you can just ask them to say their verse when they do arrive. And if someone doesn't know the verse, allow them to say what they do know from the whole passage so far. This will help them recall what they've learned, and it will help prevent them from slacking. By the way, we memorize and recite scripture cumulatively. That means we're adding to what we learn and say each week, not replacing it, which also means it'll take longer to say the verses each subsequent week of the study, so be sure to plan accordingly. Each week, we also issue a weekly challenge, which is our practical response to what we've learned in the study. This helps us lean into being doers of the word and not hearers only, like James says. If you have time after everyone has said their memory verses, consider having a quick conversation about the weekly challenge, maybe 5 to 10 minutes or so, depending on the size of your group. This gives you a chance to see how the study is bearing fruit in the lives of your members. It also serves as a great segue into the weekly video. Each session you'll have a 20-ish minute teaching video. You'll all watch this together at your group meeting. Plan ahead for this, make sure your TV or your computer works, including the speakers. By the way, I encourage you to personally preview the video in advance before showing it to your group. That will really help you prepare for the discussion. But even though you'll have already seen the video by the time your group meets, it's still helpful to give it your full attention during the meeting. This sets an example for your members to follow. But if you're distracted or on your phone, others will see that as acceptable. So be sure to set the example as the leader by paying attention to the video each week. After you've watched the session video, it's a good time to lead the group discussion. Here are a few pro tips for leading through the discussion. A, focus on the topic. If someone gets off topic, don't hesitate to rein them in, and give everyone in the group permission to do that too, even if you're the one who gets off on the rabbit trail. If someone's sharing a personal story, I know it can be hard to cut them off initially, so make it clear that you care about what's happening in their life and that you're happy to discuss it afterward or at another time, but that you want to honor the group's purpose in doing this study and carving out time to meet each week. B, plan ahead. Each week we've included about 10 discussion questions that you can use during your group meeting. You'll want to review these beforehand and mark the ones you want to discuss. By the way, you don't have to discuss every single question every week. You may not have time for that, especially if your group is on the larger size. So choose the ones you may think will serve your group best. You may also want to mark any questions or statements that jump out to you as you're doing the study, putting a star by the things you want to share or by the questions you want to address in the discussion. However you choose to approach the discussion time, just come with a plan. C, be selective. Not only do you not have to answer all the questions, but you also don't have to have everyone answer the questions you do choose. If you're a smaller group, it may be wise use of your time to have everyone answer. But if you're a larger group, you may only want to hear from a few people on each question. And if you finish early, you can always go around the room and ask everyone to respond to the question, what stood out to you most in this week's study? D, give direction. If you've been in a group discussion of any kind before, chances are you've encountered the overtalker and the undertalker. There's often a person who has lots of ideas and opinions and questions and stories, and then there's someone who's happy to let that person talk on endlessly because they don't want to talk. As the leader, your goal is to rein in the overtalker and call on the undertalker. Let the group know up front that you want everyone to contribute to the conversation. We trust that God is teaching everyone something through our study of Him and His Word, and you might be surprised at who has some incredible insights. As we're quieting some people and inviting others to chime in, the last thing we want to do is embarrass either person. So if you notice early on that person A is talking all the time and person B is silent, then try calling on specific people when you ask a question and let them know you value their contribution. You could say, Aaron, we haven't had a chance to hear your thoughts on any of this yet. I'd love to hear what your answer is for this next question. That way, by inviting the undertalker to share, you've also gently taken the floor away from the overtalker. After the group discussion ends, you can say a closing prayer and send everyone on their way. By the way, there will be times when you'll be tempted to cancel, especially if you happen to expect low attendance that day. If you have a large group and only 1 or 2 members can attend that week, I know that can be disheartening, but keep the meeting. Don't cancel. Sometimes those smaller meetings are where the best stuff happens. Those are 2 or 3 living souls that can connect with God and each other. Don't underestimate it. It can be really powerful. Canceling on account of diminished attendance makes it seem like those few people who can attend don't matter. And we never want to send that message. And if you, as the leader, ever have to miss the group meeting, again, don't cancel. Instead, find a committed member who can step up to lead or choose another day of the week that works for everyone to meet. Okay, so that's what a weekly meeting might look like for you. Opening prayer, memory verses, weekly challenge discussion, session video, group discussion, closing prayer. For most groups, this will take about 2 hours, but feel free to adjust things as needed for your own group. Now I want to share a few general tips on being a good leader. The evangelist D.T. Niles said, Christianity is one beggar showing another beggar where he found bread. We're all beggars here. Your role is to help others get to where you are. You do that not only by equipping and encouraging them, but by showing them the beauty and joy that is available to them through these disciplines. Show them how good the bread is. In this study, we've put the bread or the cookies on a higher shelf for a lot of people. So what we do in order to equip, encourage, and entice them is we roll out a ladder and we cheer them on as they climb up the rungs, and we make sure the cookies are delicious. Maybe we even put a fan behind the cookie so that the fresh baked smell wafts down to them. Show them the beauty of discovering more about who God is. Here are a few ways you can do that well. Lead the way in enthusiasm. How can we do that? One way I do it is by clapping for each member after they say their verses. It may feel awkward at first because at first I'm the only one cheering, but then people start joining in and eventually it becomes the new normal. That's because enthusiasm is contagious. You can even be enthusiastic when someone drops the ball. You could say, hey, don't sweat that. You've said everything up to this week's verse perfectly. You'll get it next week. Lead the way in encouragement. Some of you will be leading very large groups, and some of you will be leading groups of just a handful of people. If you can at all, aim to meet one-on-one or even three-on-one with everyone in your group at some point during the study. For some of you, that will not be possible at all. If not, you may want to email your members individually instead and ask them how you can pray for them throughout this study. Then assign a day of the week to each person as your day to pray for them. If you have a chance, send them a text on the day that you're assigned to pray for them and let them know you're praying for them. This extra step goes a long way in encouraging your members and making them feel seen, known, and valued. People will stick around in a study where they're struggling if they feel loved. Lead the way in character. 1 Timothy 3 lays out the qualities for elders, and while I doubt that many or any of you watching this video are elders at your church, there's still good qualities in that passage for leaders in general. So read through that list when you have a chance. You may notice that there's only one thing in that list that's a skill: able to teach. The rest of the qualifications are about character. Pay attention to your character. It matters. Lead the way in love. You may see things in the lives of your members that no one else is seeing. You may have an opportunity to love and bless this person in a way they've never been loved or blessed. Where a member's actions are off, whether it's blatant sin or just not doing the study, always start by addressing their heart, not their actions. What I mean by that is, instead of saying, "You're really dropping the ball, get it together," you might say, "Hey, I feel like I've been seeing X in your life, so I just wanted to reach out to you, first of all, to see if my perception is accurate or not. And second, if my perception is accurate, what's happening in your heart? Talk to me about that. I want to help you with this if I can. And if not, I want to be able to point you to someone else who can give you wisdom and help." When someone feels loved and pursued in the midst of their sin, they get a glimpse of the Father's love, and you will be blessed by being the one to show them that kind of love. Lead the way in vision. I know this is just a 6-week study, but chances are you're going to be leading something beyond this. This isn't the only place you're going to step up to the plate to lead. If you're narrow-minded or short-sighted in your vision, you'll burn out. You'll expect things in the now that can only happen in the long run. Or you won't even think about the long run, and you'll realize you weren't prepared for all it demanded of you. We're not sprinters here, we're marathoners. Whether you know it or not, you're engaging in discipleship. And that is not a small vision. It's a God-sized vision and calling. And in order to be sustained through it, there are 2 things you'll have to stay connected to or you'll burn out. Number 1, the gospel. Number 2, the people. When you feel spiritually drained as a leader, make sure you're spending time alone with God to be filled up. Not so that you can get something to pour out, but so that you can be poured into. Make sure you're resting or taking a Sabbath. And when you feel emotionally drained as a leader, go do something fun with your people. It will connect you to the humans behind the mission. You are doing a great work for the kingdom. You aren't responsible for the responses of your members. You're only responsible for the way you lead. There will be fruit. In John 15, Jesus said, "By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit and so prove to be my disciples. These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be full." I want you all to bear the mark of God's blessing and to feel the joy that He has for you in this study and in this role of leadership. I can't wait to dig into this study with you and learn more about God together. Lean in, my friends, because He's where the joy is.